Professor Shada Islam, thank you so much for giving us a bit more of your time. You joined us for a webinar last week talking about the geopolitical fallout from COVID-19 and what's to happen next. You've kindly given us a bit more time just to answer one or two more of our participant questions that we didn't get the chance to answer on the call. I'll introduce the first one just with a bit of context because it refers to a letter which you co-signed along with a number of other EU experts, and the letter was sent to the EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs, Josep Borrell, a few months ago. And the question continues. In this letter, experts argue that the EU should focus on multilateralism in response to geopolitical issues. However, given that the US is slowly decreasing its support to European security, shouldn't the EU, especially now, focus only on Europe? And also geopolitics, especially when the US, China and Russia play a zero-sum game, surely the EU will lose out by playing the multilateralism card. By trying to adhere to the rules-based order, doesn't the EU lose influence to others who don't?
Well, I think it's exactly the opposite. It's a great question because I think it reflects general thinking at the moment that somehow if you believe in international rules and multilateral cooperation, if you think about working together, you're somehow being soft and naive and you're being Venus in comparison to others playing Mars, you know. And I think the current European Commission came in, you know, all cylinders firing, saying there was going to be a geopolitical commission. I think that was a rather sad slogan because you can't really be, as a European Union, a geopolitical force in the traditional sense of the term, in the old-fashioned great power competition sense of the term. The EU is a very important geopolitical power, but it is a multilateral geopolitical power, and I think we have to redefine geopolitics and we have to redefine multilateralism in order to understand the role of the European Union. It's an inspiring story of countries putting aside their divisions and their differences, coming together, inspired by the idea of no more wars. Now that's a very, very inspiring slogan and mantra of solidarity among countries, which many across the world actually admire. We have enough geopolitical players, we have enough great powers. I actually believe that small powers are more important than great powers. Great powers fight their fights and smaller countries are trampled, but they're now increasingly across the world standing up and saying, we count as well. And you see that with New Zealand, with Canada, with Singapore, Chile, countries coming forward with their own ideas. And I think that's the kind of multilateral cooperation and framework that Europe, which has done it with its 28, now 27 countries, is very strong at. Inspiring countries through its rulemaking, its human rights issues, its values. This is Europe's real strength. And I think when Europe doesn't play that role of multilateral champion, if you like, that's where it becomes soft and weak, not when it's actually doing what it really believes in, which is about collaboration across borders and countries working together for the common good, not economic or political nationalism.
Thank you. And that question was from Tom Wagonmakers. So one final question. During the webinar, you said that you were cautiously optimistic. Part of the webinar sort of pivoted around the comments of the French Foreign Minister last week about the world, you know, potentially being in a worse place after COVID than before. But you said you were cautiously optimistic about a kind of transformational moment. Could you tell us about, I guess, your reasons for optimism at the current time?
Because I think at the moment, what we don't have, Jonathan, is wise leadership. You know, we have, as I said during the webinar, we have great power politicians playing like children, bullies in the playfield, and there's no adult around to supervise. And once again, my optimism is based really on what Europe can be if it sets its mind and its heart on being that, which is the adult in the room, which is the power that comes forward and says, guys, enough is enough. Humanity is at stake here. Global growth is at stake here. If we don't work together, if we don't get our act together, we're really going to destroy not just ourselves, but the rest of the world as well. And, we'll be blamed for that. But I have to say, I said cautiously, because there are some wise leaders within the European Union. I mean, there are a handful perhaps, but they are there and they are important, and they do talk in wise and careful and cautious terms. But at the moment, what we have, and you'll see it across the EU states, but also within the EU institutions, too many people saying too many conflicting and confusing things. Sometimes it's better to keep quiet than to make things worse. And I think my if you like, my sort of pessimism comes from the fact that we're not seeing that yet. There is no real leadership within the EU to make that, make Europe play that kind of international role that I'm talking about. Having said that, where I think we are really seeing change is how we define or redefine power. National leaders and statecraft is one thing, but we're seeing a lot of solidarity, a lot of initiatives, a lot of inspiring stories coming from states, governors, coming from mayors of capitals, mayors who are opening their arms in their cities to unaccompanied minor refugee children who are also stuck in camps across the south of Europe. We see that from initiatives, solidarity initiatives coming from non-governmental organizations, from civil society actors. We're seeing women and minorities coming forward and becoming really rule makers at this time as well, albeit at a smaller, lower level. But these are the kinds of things that in our world today matter. They don't matter. They don't matter perhaps as much to journalists as the big, inflammatory statements. They don't matter perhaps as much to journalists as these huge inflammatory statements being made by rather deranged state leaders, but they matter to how our societies work and how we as people see our future together. So if you see now what's happening in the COVID-19 emergency, you see people, like us, joining each other online, talking about our common concerns and our common challenges. There's a lot of solidarity and collaboration happening across borders. It's just that our national leaders aren't reflecting that reality. They're reflecting a reality of great power competition. And I think my cautious optimism comes from the fact that I hope the new world order, or the new world that will come after this epidemic, this pandemic is over, will be one where power is not just about muscle, military heft, and the words you say, but actually about the kind of actions I'm talking about: solidarity, compassion, empathy.
Shada Islam, thank you so much.
Thank you.